Have you ever heard a story so strange, so perfectly documented, that it blurs the line between history and myth? A story that has puzzled historians and scientists for centuries? Today, we're journeying back to 12th century England, to a small, unassuming village called Woolpit, where one summer day, something truly impossible happened. Imagine the scene: peaceful golden fields, farmers tending to their harvest, the familiar sounds of rural life. Suddenly, out of a wolf pit, a deep ditch dug to trap wolves, two small figures emerge, a boy and a girl. But these weren't ordinary children. Their skin was a distinct, unnatural shade of green. They were dressed in strange, unfamiliar clothes, and they spoke a language that no one in the village could understand. The villagers, a mix of frightened and fascinated, brought the children to the home of a local landowner, Sir Richard de Colin. But a new mystery began to unfold. The children refused all food. They wouldn't touch bread, meat, or anything the villagers offered. For days they grew weaker, on the verge of starvation. Then someone had an idea. They brought them freshly picked green beans, still in their pods. The children's eyes lit up. They eagerly shelled the beans and ate them raw, as if it were the most natural food in the world. For a long time, green beans were all they would eat. As time passed, the children slowly adapted. The boy, who had always seemed weaker and more melancholic, sadly grew sick and passed away. The girl, however, began to thrive. Her green skin gradually faded to a normal complexion, and she started to eat other foods. Most importantly, she learned to speak English. And when she could finally communicate, she told a story that was even more baffling than her appearance. She said her name was Agnes, and that she and her brother came from a place called St. Martin's Land. She described it as a subterranean world, a place of perpetual twilight where the sun never shone. Everything, she explained, was bathed in a constant green glow, which is why the people there also had green skin. She couldn't explain how they got to Woolpit. She remembered that one day, they were herding their father's flock when they were drawn to a captivating sound like the ringing of bells. They followed the sound into a cavern and wandered through the darkness for a long, long time. The next thing they knew, they were blinded by a brilliant light and found themselves at the bottom of the wolf pit, hearing the sounds of the harvesters above. Agnes was baptized, and as she grew up, she was known for being rather loose and wanton in her conduct. She eventually married a man from a nearby town, King's Lynn, and lived out the rest of her days, assimilated into medieval English society. But her story, the story of the green children, was never forgotten. Why? Because it wasn't just a local rumor whispered around a fireplace. It was documented by two separate, credible chroniclers of the time, Ralph of Coggeshall and William of Newburgh. These weren't writers of fiction. They were respected historians who recorded the events of their era. William of Newburgh, in his Historia Rerum Anglicarum, even stated that he was hesitant to write about it for a long time because it sounded so absurd. But he was convinced by the testimony of so many and such worthy witnesses that he felt compelled to record it. He noted that the story was common knowledge and widely believed. Ralph of Coggeshall, an abbot at a Cistercian monastery, claimed in his Chronicum Anglicanum to have heard the story directly from Sir Richard de Colin himself, the man who had taken the children into his home. This isn't just a folktale. It's a historical account, recorded by two different sources, with specific details that have remained consistent for over 800 years. So, what are we to make of this? For centuries, people have tried to explain the unexplainable. Let's look at some of the theories. The most mundane explanation is that it's just a folktale, a symbolic story about the clash between the established villagers and outsiders, or perhaps a garbled account of a real-life event that got wildly exaggerated over time. But the detailed historical records make this hard to accept entirely. Another, more grounded theory suggests the children were Flemish immigrants. During that period, there was significant persecution of Flemish people in England. The theory goes that these two children might have been orphaned or lost, fleeing persecution. Their strange clothing and language would have been Flemish, unfamiliar to the isolated English villagers. But what about the green skin? This is where the theory gets clever. Proponents suggest a condition called chlorosis, a type of severe anemia caused by malnutrition. It's also known as green sickness because it can give the skin a greenish tint. If the children were malnourished, it could explain their skin color and their initial refusal of unfamiliar food, only eating the beans they recognized. The land of perpetual twilight could have been Jehovah's symbolic description of their difficult underground existence, perhaps hiding in forests and mines. But this theory has holes. Chlorosis doesn't make you literally bright green, it's a pale, sallow tint. And would two respected historians really describe it in such a dramatic way? Also, what about the cavern and the sound of bells? It feels like we're trying to force a square peg into a round hole. This brings us to the more out-there explanations. Were the green children from another dimension, a parallel universe? The idea of a subterranean world, a hollow earth, has been a recurring theme in myths and speculative fiction for ages. St. Martin's Land, as described by Agnes, sounds like a world completely alien to our own. Did they stumble through some kind of portal, a rift in the fabric of reality that happened to open up in a field in Suffolk? The sound of bells drawing them in, the sudden shift from a twilight world to our bright sunlight. It almost sounds like a classic portal fantasy story, except it was recorded as fact. And then of course there's the extraterrestrial theory. Could the green children have been aliens? Transported to Earth, disoriented and alone. Their unknown fabric clothes, their strange physiology, and their unearthly origins could all point to an extraterrestrial encounter. The underground world could have been their ship or a temporary base. It's a wild idea, but when faced with a story that defies conventional explanation, people's minds tend to wander to the stars. The problem is, there's zero evidence to support this beyond the sheer strangeness of the account. What I find most compelling is not any single theory, but the endurance of the mystery itself. The story of the green children of Woolpit has survived for nearly a millennium. It's a perfectly preserved historical enigma. Every detail, the green skin, the bean diet, the subterranean home, the journey through a cavern has been passed down intact. Modern science can analyze the soil of Woolpit, but it can't give us a definitive answer. Historians can study the chronicles, but they can't fully explain what Ralph and William recorded. It leaves us suspended between belief and disbelief. Are we looking at a case of medieval malnutrition and prejudice, a fantastical folktale that was mistaken for history, or a genuine encounter with the unknown? Did two lost, frightened children from another land wander into Woolpit? Or did two beings from another world altogether find themselves stranded on ours? The truth, whatever it may be, is lost to time. But the story remains, a haunting reminder that our history is filled with moments that are stranger than any fiction we could ever imagine. What do you think? Let me know your best theories in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into one of history's most fascinating unsolved mysteries. If you enjoy exploring the strange and the unexplained, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more adventures into the unknown. Until next time, stay curious.